For those of you who've seen my panels before, you know I don't sit down. I'm very fidgety, it's very distracting, so I tend to stay as far away from the speakers as I possibly can, hence the roaming mic. My name is Paula Ledieu. I do lots of different things. Right now, the most relevant things I think for this discussion is I sit on the board of DocFest. I am the nominal digital person on the board, which is ridiculous when you think people like Heather Crowell are on that board as well, but that's the idea. And the other probably most relevant thing for this is that I'm the Senior Director for Mozilla Foundation here in the UK, and I'm very involved in the tools that they are developing to help people make the web, so the WebMaker tools. We'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. I am the least interesting aspect, however, of our discussion today. I am extremely pleased to have three fabulous people on the stage. Hopefully all of you caught Katrina. I've said that right, haven't I? I had one of those moments where I thought I'm going to say exactly the wrong thing. Katrina Ciszek, who did the keynote this morning, and frankly, after that incredibly inspiring tour through her creative life, I managed to get her back on the stage to talk a little bit about the sort of the practical elements of the kinds of projects that she's been working on. We are also joined, however, by Atlee Lockbridge and Errol King. Result, I've got all three names out correctly. And they are really going to be talking to us today also from really the leading edge of interactive storytelling and practice and development. But really, if we sort of think about the two pieces, if you like, that make up personal practice, it's really thinking about the methodologies, and those emerging methodologies that help us start to make sense of how we do interactive storytelling. And Atlee and Errol are really going to talk us through two different projects and talk us through the kind of methodologies that they're starting to develop to help them develop those projects. And then Kat and I are really going to focus on some of the emerging tool sets. Have I got that right? Have I left anything out? We're all good? Awesome. So I think what we're going to do is we'll kick off with Atlee and Errol, who are going to do just a little short presentation and take us through a couple of case studies. I'm also going to get them to do much better introductions of themselves than I could ever do justice. And then I think what we will do, and due warning to everyone, the other reason I have a roaming mic is I'm not scared to come and shove it in your face and ask questions. So be ready. And I do want to make sure that we have as much opportunity for you guys to engage in this conversation. So I think we'll start with Atlee and Errol, see if we've got some discussion and some questions that come out of that, and then we'll move on to the tools piece with Kat and myself. So over to you guys.
All right. Hi there. I'm Atlee Lockbridge. I'm a co-founder and creative director at Reboot Stories. It's a company, we're based in the States. We use story and technology for social change. And I didn't put many catchphrases in this presentation, so I'm going to have to call them out. The first one is purposeful storytelling. So this is a project that we did around foster care in the States. It's called My Sky is Falling. And what we did was we kind of took the story of a foster care alumni, Lydia Joyner, and her cousin, and kind of followed these two paths of them going through foster care, and then created this project, My Sky is Falling, which is almost, it's an experience design that kind of walks participants through over the course of 90 minutes, this science fiction tale. They come in like having no idea that it has to do with foster care. They walk through this sci-fi world that has installation and found stories and things that were created by foster care kids. And then at the end, they meet Lydia. That's Lydia there, surrounded by all of her foster care files. This crazy story. They get like the kids, when they age out of the foster care program, they get these banker boxes that have hundreds and hundreds of files about their lives. Many of them, you know, some like untrue accounts or people's names being changed and all of these things. And it's kind of a project about her and other foster care kids as we kind of evolve this framework. a story of transformation, owning your story, and connecting with fragmented communities across like the justice system, education, social workers, medical, all of these people who a child will be passed from, to kind of come together and think about, from a position of empathy, what does it really feel like to kind of go through this experience? We also have been working with this idea of data and measuring social impact. So one technology we used in this kind of modular design of My Sky is Falling was these affectiva Q sensors, which were developed at MIT. And what they do is measure your sympathetic nervous system. So you just put them on your wrist, and through like measuring your sweat and your heartbeat and all of these things, it comes out with this data about where you were engaged and where you weren't engaged. And this is then needs to be complemented with some sort of feedback where the users themselves can give insight into what they were feeling at particular points over the course of the 90-minute experience. And what this does is it helps us both understand the framework and improve the framework of My Sky is Falling, because it will ultimately be used by foster care programs like the Brevard Family Partnership in order to train potential parents and social workers. So this is just kind of a little snapshots of people going through the experience at various points and what they said they felt like. So feeling like they had a loss of authority or liberation or, feeling humbled and informed. So in that, you kind of get this sense of the purposeful storytelling, but also this idea of designing with. And, designing with others rather than for others, so bringing the foster care kids in to design with us. That brings me to this next project, Leica's Adventure. So this is kind of geared towards a younger age group. It's, kind of 3 to 8-year-olds, although I have had 18-year-olds fight me for that Leica doll. Leica's Adventure is a story about a robot from outer space. Her planet, far, far away, planet of me, actually is dying because all of her robots, their hearts have been growing smaller and smaller. They've used up all of the resources and flown away. Leica has a huge heart, so she stayed with Planet of Me, but then in looking for other life, friends, and family in the universe, she strayed from Planet of Me and found Earth. She crash-landed here, and then over the course of her travels, she, was sad to find out her other robots weren't on Earth, but she does learn about these different sustainability practices with the help of children. And so this is like physically traveling the world and going up into the atmosphere. And she travels, kind of from school to school, and also families who are hosting a foreign exchange student from another planet. And we're playing with this idea of, can a robot reboot education? and how the story world can kind of inspire learning. So this is kind of we work across multiple platforms. We're platform agnostic. We really focus on the story, and the technology kind of comes in where it makes sense. This is this idea of story as software. So Leica herself, the doll, we're actually prototyping a connected toy. So this is the toy right here, who's just a plush analog. But the connected toy will ultimately have sensors embedded within her, so she becomes a device for children to explore data around the world around them. So sensors measuring temperature or the air quality, photocell sensors, and different things that kind of let them feel like scientists, kind of discovering the world around them. And another big part of our program with Leica, again, getting back to this idea of designing with rather than designing for, is these hacks, which we do at schools with various age groups. And this is a hack that we just did in Sheffield with the film festival just on Monday. And we got 30 kids ranging from ages 8 to 11 to join us. And this is us kind of prototyping Laika's home planet out of Play-Doh. We also do activities like, what they ultimately created was the students decided they wanted to create like an animation film. In the past, we've had students create fashion or songs or dances. And they also work with this kind of connected devices, again, coming back to the Internet of Things and objects outside of yourself that can sense the world around you. So this is a connected spaceship, which was designed and put together by our wonderful programmer and game designer, Errol King. So with that, I'm going to just hand it over to Errol.
Actually, Atlee, could I just ask a really quick question? Sorry,
Sure.
Errol, because I'm really deeply fascinated with this sort of area around co-design or designing with. And I was wondering if you could just spend like just a minute or a couple of minutes talking about how you arrived at that process, because I think for many of us who come from a storytelling, almost a sort of an auteur position of we have a story, we're going to tell that story. How did you guys open that door so that actually the story is told by everyone?
That's a really interesting question. So for us, we've been working on these projects for several years. Laika's Adventure, My Sky is Falling, Wish for the Future. These are projects that are, almost five years long, and they'll kind of go on forever. So it's this process of a constant iteration. And I think we arrived at designing with in practice before we actually dubbed it Designing With, if that makes any sense. So we often found that we were a big fan of the kind of open software movement, the open design movement. We're big fans of this idea that, while we saw a lot of ad agencies and stuff around us going for like the it story or the it person or the it idea, we were kind of like, no, it's the idea of everybody. It is that, that idea of harnessing the imaginations and sparking the imaginations of everyone. So we started doing these hacks and workshops a long time ago where we tried to bring in people of various age groups, kind of speaking towards cross-generational learning and people from various fields in order to kind of get this holistic approach that kind of bridged silos, essentially highlighting comprehensivists. And I think in that process of just constantly trying to stretch beyond to groups that we, who we had never spoken with before, we got to this idea of designing with. So for example, with My Sky is Falling, that project didn't exist until we met Orange Duffel Bag, which is an NGO in the States advocating for kids who are aging out of the foster care program. And when we heard these stats of the kids, being subject to identity theft because people stole their documents, or because there's so many government files on them, or not being able to own things like toothpaste because their foster parents were afraid of the liability warnings on the labels, so they would be rationed out, or 3% going on to college and 3% graduating. And it just kind of gets worse and worse. It's unbelievable. It felt like there was this parallel sci-fi world that foster kids in America were walking around in, and it was like invisible to us, like we had no idea. So that's when this idea came that it was like, really the best way to tell this story is through a science fiction, because it's unbelievable. And that's how the story started. The whole data side of it was from working with the Harmony Institute, which is a research company in the States, trying to measure social impact, trying to measure engagement versus, 1 million likes on Facebook. Like, what does that really mean? What's the action that is really inspiring? So we're trying to experiment with new ways to measure depth of engagement and to measure actual action in participants and change and transformation in them. And that is organically, in this iterative process over lots and lots of time and conversations, collaborating with many, many people that, some of these projects develop. Does that answer your question?
That was awesome. Exactly what I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank
Errol,
you.
did you want to have have a go.
Hello. This is Monday. As you see here, we've designed a spaceship out of cardboard. On the bottom left hand, you see we've taken Arduino, which is an open source electronics platform, and we work with each hack. We work with the kids to have them envision what they want to happen. We explain system input, output, and we allow them to sort of like play with switches and lights to get that feeling in that moment of magic when you're playing. But they have an experience when they're young, where they get to kind of like play with electronics and really see what it's like. And this is just a quick example of what we did on Monday. Another hack that we did, this is in New York. We took some solar panels and we actually hacked Leica on this day, where we kind of cut her open and took some solar panels, and we allowed the kids to kind of put the light on the solar panel, the LED. And what was amazing about this hack, there was two things that I remember. One was when I cut the doll, I didn't have the foresight to realize that the metaphor of cutting the doll would immediately, it was like, no, don't cut the doll. And I was like, oh, yes. And, so in that moment in designing with, I recognized the fear and had to quickly say, oh, well, she's telling me that she's feeling good and she would like you all to hold her hand, and you kind of get to kind of roll with the punches there. But the other magic was allowing them to see that the sun is a source of energy. When they take the solar panel, I don't know how many of you have used a small solar panel, but like the moment the sun even remotely touches it, the light comes on. And there's this magical moment when the child goes, well, how is the light turning on? And you get to then explain that there's energy everywhere, and it is at your disposal if you decide to play with it. So that's the beauty of the hack, and working with Atlee in these hacks is really amazing, because you go in and you have somewhat of a plan, but really the feedback from the kids is what guides the actual process. IQ Bytes is my company. We are a collective based in New York of technologists, educators, just a bunch of friends who just love kicking it and do some fun stuff, really. We consider ourselves interactivists, and that's really kind of a marriage between creative technology and activism. A little background about myself: I actually worked for a labor union for a long period of time in their communications and technology realm, and so I was steeped very well in just protesting, rallying, thinking about things, and trying to create conversation. But in the back of my mind, I really wanted to kind of embrace technology in my own sort of way. And so I just, I kind of went on my own and decided that I was just going to start doing whatever I wanted to do with my free time, and do these hacks and play with open source technologies, and really figure out, how do I bring this to the general public? How do you bring these sort of obscure skill sets to everyday storytelling? And then obviously in doing so, how do you create the disruption that is necessary? How do you use these things to spark imagination and allow the actual change that needs to occur? In doing so, I kind of stumbled upon a problem. I think for me, my journey has really been about digital literacy. I found that it has been my liberator in my life, just being able to have fun creating things digitally at will. And so I really wanted to focus on sharing that. And I was born in the Bronx and raised in the Bronx, and didn't really have very much access to computers, and I always wanted to. And I realized as I sort of moved, through my education and gained more access, I realized that there was a really huge divide, and that obviously in this day and age, technology is an enabler. So I wanted to focus on giving that back. So in looking at digital literacy, I said, well, literacy, if you talk about digital literacy, well, I can use a computer, I can navigate the computer, I know how to open up a document. But really, I realized that it's not about digital literacy, it's more about digital authorship. Can I read and write code? When you read a book, you take the information in, but when you write a book, you make that available for somebody else, their experience that goes on inside of them. And so I've been focusing on how do we enable in these hacks, how do we enable the kids to actually have that experience of authoring something that somebody else can experience and then watching somebody experience that? And so our goal at IQ Bytes is to create fun experiences that allow kids and players, all of you, to teach yourself how to code. How do I get myself out of the way so that the experience can happen on its own? And so we've come up with this little guy named Beta. And the goal is to play, learn, build, and share. I love Mario. Mario was like the game that I played. I'm an '84 baby, so like, you know, Mario and I were like really cuddled up really nicely for many years. And so I wanted to go back to sort of like a classic model. Here's just some of the various betas that we've designed. In doing so, I said, well, how do we create a game programming language that a kid can use? And so we designed this massive game engine, which is totally crazy, you know, hundreds of thousands of lines of code, and we compressed it into what we call Code Pop, which is a tweet-sized language. You can do anything in the game in about 100 characters. The most complex command you would ever put in is about 100 characters, and we made it kid-friendly so that they're not getting crazy syntax error, you know, responses, but Beta will actually kind of walk them through what's happening. And these are some of the commands. You can add things, you can remove, you can inspect the world and see what properties things are made of, and you can change those properties. You can morph things, you can create walls, and we made it very simple for kids to visualize and do these things. This is a little screenshot of Beta. In the top left-hand corner is where you can input, and you can see green are successful commands. It's validated as you put it in, and red shows sort of where it may be going wrong. In this situation, jump height wants a number, and we've put in letters. And so it turns red and makes the player say, oh, well, maybe there's something wrong here. And so this is a screenshot. And in this situation, you have a correct command. It's remove, and it's the name of the block. So this is just a quick look at it. So DocFest Monday. It was a great mashup between Leica and Beta. You know, it's kind of like Incredible Hulk and Wolverine getting together. It was really amazing. So we, in this part of the workshop, we kind of laid out some big paper, and the kids drew out their levels. And so you see here, this is what the world looks like from the mind of an 11-year-old. And then we actually sat them down in front of the computers and let them have at it. For a number of hours. And in the beginning, you know, obviously learning a new language is quite challenging. But by the end, they were challenging me. You know, they actually created things that I hadn't even thought to put into the game. You know, how do I make a spike look like a platform so that the player, when they think it's a platform, will hit the spike? You know, I was like, oh, well, I guess you could do that. So we did some really fun things. And as you see here, there's no better evidence of enjoyment than actual smiles on kids' faces as they're coding. And to me, like, that's the juice, that's the awesome sauce, you know. If you're coding and smiling, then we have done the right thing. And so this is the final presentation. The kids designed their levels, and then we allowed the levels to link to each other, so it created a world. And then the other part of it was we actually took Leica and put her in the game. And those little green, weird clay-looking things are actually the creations that the kids made, and we green screened them on site in the moment, and then imported them into the game so that the kids who weren't doing the coding but were doing the clay could see their creation in a digital format. And we also made it so that when Leica interacted with it, it told Leica what the name of the plant was. And so it was pretty cool because, you know, we kind of really mashed up live world and gameplay at the same time. So in terms of designing with and this transformation, you know, there's this very beautiful space where, as a designer, where you can kind of envision and you want to tell a story, but in the end you have to relinquish control and really allow the story to be told by the player. And so what types of experiences will they create? You know, what can they teach each other? What will they learn from each other? What stories will they tell? And in the long run, my goal is that 10 years down the line, some kid goes, you know, he or she is at their computer and they're making things, and they go, man, I remember the first time I coded, it was, you know, at Sheffield DocFest, and I made a game, and that was awesome, and that's really what we hope for. So Design challenges. You know, when you're making a game, you're thinking about design. You're thinking about how to create an experience that makes the player think about what's ahead of them, and to be able to take those steps, to be able to see out 2 or 3 steps to create challenges and create solutions. I think that's what will create a better world. Beta will be out in fall 2013, and you can catch me on email. And that's about it for beta and all that good stuff.
That was awesome. Thanks, Errol. I tell you what, when I grow up, I want to be just like him. I actually just wanted to call out before we move on to a sort of more of a tools piece. I think I was really struck as I was listening to both Atlee and Errol about the centrality of story to everything that you do. And I think, and I'm hoping that for many of you, that resonates with your own practice. It's the thing that I think actually draws us all together, is at the end of the day, we wake up and we want to tell a story. Most of the time we want to tell a story that changes the world. Some of us are a little less ambitious and we just want to transform all children's lives. But I think the piece that I really want to call out here is that even as we're listening to folks, talking about technologies, talking about things that often can feel alienating, I live in that world and, I still listen to stuff and go, I don't know how to do that. And I think the thing I really want to emphasize here are some really key words, things like design. And it's a word we use an awful lot when we are thinking about interactive storytelling. And for me, that's really interesting because when you're in the filmmaking world, we don't talk about design very much. It's not actually something that comes through. And I want to call it out because there is such a rich body of work about design. There are fantastic established frameworks that we all use. So we heard Mark earlier on talking about audiences and the sort of the changing life of audiences. And again, when we're thinking about design and we match that up with an understanding of audiences, it gives us this extraordinary power to understand and to help shape the kinds of experiences that we make. I wanted to sort of use that as a segue and also the lovely piece around CodePop to just talk about some of the tools that are out there for those of us who want to start thinking really seriously about interactive storytelling experiences in particular, not exclusively. And as I said, I managed to convince Kat to come back on the stage. And Kat is the perfect person to do this because she's really been at the forefront of using a particular set of tools. They're one of a wide now set of tools that are emerging, but this particular one, well, a couple actually, was a tool made by Mozilla, so that would be my ad slot. I'm now done. I'm good. Called Popcorn.js, and also another tool set called Webgl. So I'm going to get Kat to just take us through a little bit of the sort of the development of her particular project. I think who heard Kat this morning? Oh, okay, so lots of you did. Okay, cool. Because she's going to sort of talk a little bit about the project that she talked about and showed the clip for this morning called High Rise. So over to you, Kat.
Is this on? It's on. Cool. Thanks, Paula. Thanks so much for the presentations. I don't actually have a clip to show of the piece 1 Millionth Tower that I was going to talk about, just more about, I wanted to focus more on about the process of the design process, and we're really lucky to have the developer, the person who wrote the code on the project here with us today, Mike Robbins from Helios Design Lab, so we'll be throwing questions at him as well. Again, I hope you know what I'm talking about when I say 1 Millionth Tower. It's the project where we actually use very similar process, a co-design process that you were talking about. When I heard you speaking about co-design, it really made me think a lot about the documentary process and an interview that I did with Alanisa Bumsawin, in which she told me that in a real documentary, the subject tells you what the documentary is, not you. And I feel that that's really very much what you're doing. It's a process of discovery, a scientific discovery, and I feel very much a simpatico equation to what we do as documentarians is that we don't know the answers. We're looking for somewhere, getting approximating the answers. And it's through that process that we get a little bit closer, collaborating with other people. And I just want to tell you a little bit about the 1 millionth tower process, because originally it was just going to be a participatory design process, in this case an architectural charrette that we were going to do with the residents of a high-rise in downtown Toronto to reimagine the space around the high-rise. Again, you can just imagine it in your head. There's many of them here in the UK. It's just a bleak, bland tower with a lot of empty space and parkland around it. And the idea with Tower Renewal, which is a project that a team of architects in Toronto are doing, is to reimagine that space, filling in with different kinds of community spaces and sort of giving it back to the residents. So what we did was we took a group of residents from the building and partnered them with architects to go around and take photos around the building and then blow the photos up really big and put drafting paper over top and have the architects and the residents draw over top the existing photographs to reimagine the space, putting in playgrounds and just whatever they thought would work well for their space. And I always thought, well, we'll just do a nice little video about this. We'll do a short film as a documentarian. We'll just do a short film and put it up on the website. So it was going to be just a linear film, and it was going to be in a 2D box, the way we make a lot of our documentaries, and there was going to be 2 special features and something called World of High Rises. I won't get into that. You can see that on the site. But that was kind of the structure of the documentary. We took the illustrations that the architects made with the residents and had animators bring them to life so that the animations would move in a cinematic way. But then I thought, well, maybe Mike could come in on this game. I had been at a conference in New York City and seen more about the work that Brett Gaylor was doing at Mozilla, who's one of the inventors of popcorn. Basically, with popcorn, what you do is you take your video. So you still have your 2D box. At this time, this is what popcorn felt like. And on the side, as your timeline unfolded, it would link to real-time data on the web. And I found this really, really exciting. So for example, if you have a talking head inside your 2D box, say the word, I don't know, any old word. High-rise, then we would, at that moment that is being played out in the 2D box, the entry on high-rise would pop up in the Wikipedia space. Or you could have universally designed crowdsourced subtitles, for example, at the bottom. And so I thought, wow, this is really cool. This could be a really nice way of sort of contextualizing our short film about a participatory city-building process. But then Mike stayed up for a few too many nights, I think, few too many all-nighters, as a lot of developers do, and came across something called Webgl. And he came back to our team and he said, listen, this is really, really exciting software. It basically puts a 3D space directly inside your browser. So you're creating a game-like space inside the browser using open source technologies. And he showed us a test, and it was so amazing. Basically, what he did was he took a story about a space and put it inside a 3D space. So suddenly, instead of being in a 2D box, we landed in a 3D environment. But our story was still, basically we had a camera roaming around that space, and it would move through particular points in the 3D space. Unfortunately, we took that to user testers, which is, again, a very big part of the user design process. And our users told us overwhelmingly that the story didn't work. The most exciting part of the process was the free roam feature that we had at the end. I'll show you that here, in which the user could actually move around by themselves, and we needed to forefront that at the front of the experience. And so we had to redesign what was originally a linear story and re-embed it in a 3D space that the user could discover on their own. And so Mike spent a lot more all-nighters basically retaking our linear story and repopulating it in this 3D space, and suddenly that's what became the user experience inside. And then, of course, we had we sort of used a game-like feature where we had level 1 and then a level 2. So once you've seen all the stories in the 3D space, you'd kind of go to a second level, and you would tap into the special features. And I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but I think there's a lot for us to discuss and talk about, both in the designing world, but also in the documentary world, about the changing language of documentary and how basically our grammar, our vocabulary, as well as our production culture, is changing as we use these new tools, and it really transforms what we do, how we do it, with whom we make it, and thanks to, I'd say, open source, it's really cracking open not just the final product, but the way in which we do it. Like the fact that we were using open source allowed us to have users tell us, you know what you're making doesn't work, you need to go back and remake it. And that's really, really exciting because in Flash, which is basically the software that's been used for many years, is very, you have to kind of design and build everything at the beginning, and it's a very, very arduous and expensive process to go back and remake things if things don't work. So that's my contribution to this panel, and hopefully we can open up some questions for Mike about how he found Webgl and how he's been doing a lot of work with documentarians, so he might have some insight as well.
I'm going to do exactly that because we're already running out of time, and as is always the case, we've just started the conversation. I feel like we could go all afternoon quite happily. I could. I'm fascinated. Do we have any questions? I want to sort of very quickly just make sure out there, don't make me do it, people. Those who know me, I will come up. Okay.
Oh, there's one right there.
Excellent. Good work.
Hi there. I'm Lisa Nyed, working with Film i Skåne in Sweden and also with the Nordisk Panorama. A lot of your projects are also based on, when you meet the audiences, is at particular events, you're creating events for the audience to interact with the projects as well. How do you see the future together with, for example, film festivals or other sorts of platforms for the events?
Yeah, I would say that events are critical to what we do because that face-to-face interaction with our audience, like Errol said, seeing the way kids react to something is incredible. And I think that with events, there's this really exciting thing around hacks. You know, in the true sense of the word of hacking two different things together and kind of crossing fields, crossing silos, especially in the space of education. There's a huge revolution in education going on right now. And I think you'll find with film festivals across the world, if you can tap into education and cross-generational learning between teachers and non-traditional teachers and parents and kids, by any means, that is like amazing. I would also say that connected objects and sensors and immersive environments, things that people can walk through, are really nice because you can scale those. You can do them for free with just paper, and then you can do them with a budget. With sensors and technology. So it becomes a really nice modular design where you can, through partnerships with technology companies or groups that want to tell their stories, social change groups, you can amass this really interesting ecosystem of partnerships in an event that can really become the central talking point of any sort of, a film festival or an event or something like that. I think you'll find the environment is very receptive to kind of moving beyond the screen and also experimenting, failing fast. And when people feel that, that our visionary and leader, Lance Weiler at Reboot Stories will often say that he really believes that creativity lies at the edge of failure. And that's a belief that we embrace every day.
Yep, I know that one. Anything else?
Hi, Paul Howard from Story Up It. You may have seen the cards. A question to Kat. How do you measure the success of a broken narrative or a disjointed narrative? Well, not broken, but a different narrative, not a non-linear narrative. Do you use analytics or do you use anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think analytics are important for any of our work that we're trying to reach people. So definitely, time spent is a nice way to look at how long people are spending on the site. In particular, with 1 Millionth Tower, we had like up to 10-15 minutes, and the whole experience was about 20. So it's not bad considering the average length of stay on any site on the internet is about 15 seconds. So it's pretty good. I know documentarians are always freaked out when they hear, what, 10 minutes? That's nothing. But it is a long time in the internet world. But we do try and look at other stuff too, especially in the context of the National Film Board of Canada, where we're trying to impact social change as well. So looking at sort of not just how much conversation there is on Twitter or Facebook, but what's the quality of that conversation. Obviously comments and that kind of thing is a big way to measure. And then also just policy impact. I mean, 1 Millionth Tower actually has had concrete, as I was saying this morning, concrete policy impact. And it's because we used open source technology. Those things are all linked. And I think in terms of thinking about the way that we make change in the world, that's part of the picture. So if we had just done a short film, we probably wouldn't have had that same impact. So.
I'm so sorry. We have to wind it up there. I just wanted to pull out, I guess, a couple of things, because this was about transforming yourselves and what can you do and what kinds of methodologies and what kind of tools. And it feels to me like if I had to sort of summarize it, it's still do it yourself. It's get out there. Fail fast is the one that I really picked up. There are tools there, go find them, play with them. They will give you a starter. And then it's really innovate, iterate. Does that sound like a fair kind of thing? Yeah. And collaborate, yeah, indeed, good call. I think that sort of collaboration piece is also there. Please join me in thanking my very talented and fabulously articulate panel.